Good to go?
Oh, no, you can see the B.
All right. We'll call the executive meeting for May 13th at 3 o'clock to order. Roll call, everyone present. Okay. And Don will be here in 5 minutes. Approval of minutes for April 14th.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
I second.
We have 2 yellow spots in there. Was that?
Yeah. 7A, motion made by, seconded by in yellow.
That's on me. Whoops. I'll review it and get those in there. Sorry about that.
I would assume that the motion was made by me, but I don't remember who seconded.
I would say the odds are about 60.
I was gonna say, yeah.
And-
Okay, I just wanted
Dean.
I wanted to get that cleared up. Anyway,
Yeah.
motion been made and second. Any additions, corrections? Besides what Andrew's gonna fix? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Public comment. Anything, Dan? Nope. County managers report.
Going to go through the agenda for the board meeting as is normal. It's very much mirroring this particular meeting. I did note as I went in there, the title needs to get a change because we're not doing an organizational meeting. I caught all the Tuesdays to Wednesdays, but I missed that one. Typical reports of the county manager, purchases of $40,000. The presentation that we're going to kind of go over in this committee, I plan on utilizing for the full board, potentially changes based on, I guess, advice that we receive here. But I really did kind of develop it, intending it for the larger board. And then I put on there strategic lenses operational planning component, which is another activity here. I think that's something that as we kind of go through this process, I wanted to put it on the agenda as it may be something that we do, but that's certainly something that we wanted to discuss with this committee as we go forward.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment about that?
Sure, go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a full agenda. And that strategic planning process has taken lots of time for our staff. And it seems to me that we're setting aside way too little time and attention for the executive committee, who is supposed to be providing direction to the whole process, to take it up. I mean, we can't do this in 15 minutes or an hour. So what's your plan on this today?
So the plan on this today as it relates to the strategic lenses. So as we had talked through the overall process related to how we were going to do this operational planning process. So we started off by the creation of service catalogs by department. So that was a lot of the work that the departments have done. And I would argue for the most part, a lot of that work, well, most of the work on the department side has been completed in that regard, as that's what really we were asking department heads to do, is to create what are all of the things and where are you. As we move forward now, as we're working through the committees, we're working through some opportunities and threats type evaluation specific to the committees. And then this level right here is kind of a strategic vision, or strategic lenses is the term that we're utilizing, which is this committee providing a higher level lens as it relates to the integration. So as each of the committees works through their specific information, the next kind of phase of that is how do we take all of the committee information into one, which is really the work of this committee. So this is kind of an initial phase of identifying some of those lenses in which you're going to be looking at things. And I think part of that, as we talk about that to the full board, is do you want some information from the full board as to where they see that? So
It is, I mean, I understand how the process is supposed to work. It is the strategic lenses. It is the vision for the budget. It is the vision for the budget cutting. It's important. It sets the tone for all that. And I'm concerned that we can't do it in 15 minutes, a half an hour. It's too important to basically dismiss it.
Yeah.
And that's my judgment, not anyone else's.
Sure. So I guess I would encourage as we get to that portion, as we go through that as we go through that process, we identify how this is working out, right? This is a process that has been put together, that has been used at some other counties and is growing into other counties, but we're certainly adapting as we go on the fly. And if that's something that you as a group have determined, you know what, we're not ready to move this forward, we're not ready to identify those strategic lenses coming out of it, then we don't do it and we continue on in moving forward. It is very much a plan that we had kind of put together, but if it's not working, we change course and we identify a way that can work. It's certainly a challenge, and I hear what you're saying, to do a strategic process with 29 people and 29 departments and all of this. So I think we're, yeah, yeah. So, and it's been an evolutionary process, even as we've worked through 3 committees now. John and I had a long conversation, or text conversation last night in order to change the way we were going to go through this process with the highway committee this morning, based on how it went with the CRNT committee the night before and how it went with facilities the day before. So we're changing kind of on the fly based on how things are working, and I would argue this would be the same piece as we get into this part of the process.
If I might, I know when we were discussing this initially, part of the expectation was, so we set an initial, we discussed an initial schedule that was way too optimistic. We discussed a secondary schedule, and sort of this is the optimum timeline schedule, with the full expectation that the discussion that would happen at this committee and at the board would probably extend that timeline. But if we didn't target that much faster process, the chance of it having a useful impact on this year's budget cycle was pretty minimum. And that may end up where we're at, but we have to be moving it forward more or less as quickly as possible if we're going to get it, if we're going to use it this time. And we may not. That was part of the discussion from the get-go, was, do we have the time to really implement this year? If we do, this is the timeline we have to follow.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, just that's.
And I'm not disputing the process. I think this board has needed to do strategic planning for 10 years. But it's the importance that gets attached to this committee and the board setting parameters. These are our values. This is what we want to consider in the budget. It's important to do that, and we can't do it in 15 minutes. So
Yeah, and I think if we got to go to the full county board and we think we're going to take longer, we can have, either the August meeting, if that's too late, I don't know,
So,
but we can have a lot more time.
yeah, August is the budget workshop.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the, hoping that we can have, I think, even some of this work done and the committee work done to kind of culminate at that point where we have, that's really where we have that discussion, where a little bit of the guidance has been provided, as well as the committee guidance, where we kind of smash that all together and have that conversation. So to say that these things have to be determined today, I would say they ideally are determined by the budget workshop in August.
Sorry. Sounds good. All right, continue on.
All right. So we'll have reports from Child Support, Criminal Justice Collaboration, and Veterans. We have a budget amendment for Human Services, Land Information, Criminal Justice. And then resolution authorizing the issuance of a parameters resolution to exceed $12.3 million. And then a resolution adopting the capital improvement plan and an ordinance amending chapter 2 of the rules of the board. These are all items that are on our agenda for the executive committee today. So those are all pending the approval of this committee moving forward. And then finally, a resolution to create a petition to request a change to the FCC television market area for Dunn County, which came from the Community Resources and Tourism Committee. Short version of that is it's also in our executive agenda that would get us, it is a petition to get Eau Claire local channels in Dunn County for satellite providers, which is the extent of what we can petition for as a county. So. All right, and so yeah, that's kind of the agenda for the county board. Let me see, in numbers, I think a lot of them are very closely related, to the point that my presentation kind of covers the three main items, which are our agenda here.
Is that it?
That is the county board agenda.
Okay.
Me share my screen. I very recently added some color to the PowerPoint. And I would welcome your feedback on the way that I shared the PowerPoint with you, kind of in development. It's one of those things that I'm working on it either way. I can create a written report and a PowerPoint if that is the preference. But I knew there was a lot to kind of go over, and I wanted to get this information out to you to dig through over the few days. So if that worked for you, let me know if you want me to go about
I
it
thought
a
it was really
different way.
good. I mean, it helps kind of plan for today anyway, so.
As I can tell you, if I can just create one PowerPoint instead of a PowerPoint and a staff report,
Yeah.
that's great. So,
Yep.
So. All right, so 2026 borrowing and CIP, and so this is gonna kind of, like I said, I feel a lot of these things are closely related, and I think some pretty significant decisions to be made as we go forward. So to start off, at the budget, at the adoption of the 2026 budget, we passed two resolutions, one for 9.5 million and one for 3 million. So one for HVAC and one for highway projects. And our plan for that, as we kind of put those forward, was to say, we're going to do those borrows in September, which is the typical timeline that we would do those borrows. And as the projects move along, we would provide cash from the county to do those, and then we would reimburse ourselves with the borrowing. So that was the plan. And I am proposing a change to that plan. I would say, quite frankly, I did not expect the HVAC project people to be ready to be underway like now. So they are going to start drilling wells here in the very near future, and as soon as they start doing work, we start having to pay bills. So. Yep. I received an estimate from them, and as we get into September, we would be looking at probably about $6 million worth of expenses for that project that we would have to do. And don't forget that we're also fronting the $3 million of highway projects along those same lines, and those are typically going to be completed around that same September. And when I see borrow in September, we don't receive the money till October. So we kind of, as we look forward to that. So as we look to do that, we're looking to kind of move up that borrowing window sooner. And so this is a resolution to do as we've done in the past, a parameters resolution that will allow myself and the chair and the county clerk to execute the borrowing based on the parameters that have been defined within the resolution. So it's going to define the rate and the schedule and the amount of time that needs to go through. And so as the former chairs over there smiling, as we put those up for sale, that sale ends and we receive a phone call and then we all jump to run to go sign something because we have a window in which we need to sign that. So the former chair used to have to like reschedule vacations around our borrows. So that'll allow us to, we're kind of looking at June, probably before the June meeting that we would execute that. There's a few extra steps that we have. We have, I believe it's either 60 or 90 days after that parameters resolution to execute that. Few items as it relates to that. The parameters resolution is based on 12.3 million. As you remember, we did two resolutions, one for 9.5 and one for 3. So to do those combined, our bond counsel has advised us that we need to vote on 12.3. That 12.3 will require a 2/3 vote of the elected members of the board. I feel like I'm skipping forward on some of my slides. So that's going to, so that's one of the items that we need to look at. The other part, well, this is an item related to the cash flow. So I talked a little bit about us needing potentially like $6 to $9 million through October that we would need. So as we look at our cash, and don't confuse fund balances with cash. But as we look at our cash on 12/31, we had about $31 million of cash. In the end of December, we always have a lot of money because that's when tax collection begins. So we're receiving first collection of taxes at that time. And so that we typically have a really high time as it relates to cash in the system. We do invest a lot of our money in order to receive some of that. So we have about 6.5 million in long-term investments. So though that money is available to us to take, we may pay a penalty, or really when you make a long-term investment, you're intending to kind of keep that money in there. So it's available to us, not necessarily wise for us to tap into that money if we were to do that. And then the remaining investments are in an area that is a little bit more liquid. However, they're earning between 4.2 and 4.8% interest, depending on which bucket.
I can't read the second line in that.
It says it's harder to liquidate and you may pay penalties. Yep. So, and then in addition to that, as we look at our cash balances, we target about $5 million of like just cushion, I guess, as you would call that. So part of that is with our bank accounts, we are, I wouldn't say required, but in some cases we are required to hold a certain balance within our account, just like you would. There's some free checking accounts, but even in some personal accounts, you can't go below a certain amount or you pay a fee. Same thing there. We actually have a relationship with our bank where we maintain a certain amount of money and we pay no fees as long as we maintain that level. So we can dip quickly, but not a long term there. So 5 is kind of what we target there. That's also going to get us a couple of payroll cycles and things like that in maintaining. So kind of look at that as don't touch money, but it's there for us. And yep, so that's that. This is a graph that has been put together by our municipal advisor that kind of shows, what our cash flow looks like over time. So you can see the highs and the lows. And obviously one of the two biggest lows that we have are right before first collection and right before second collection. So it dips down. So as we look at our cash flow and as we look at how that project is going to hit, we're hitting one of our low spots as well when we're going to start to see some of that additional money there. So that's kind of the reasoning for doing that borrow earlier is we're going to really start kind of getting ourselves into a part of cash that's not necessarily making everybody happy. And then the other side of that is we're projecting, based on the advice of our municipal advisors, to get about a 4% rate. So our investments are making 4.2 to 4.8, and we're borrowing at 4. It's better for us to borrow that money as opposed to eliminate that additional revenue source. So this is kind of the written summary of what I just said. So here's the combined resolution, which requires 3/4 votes, and then is also the parameters resolution. So then that would move forward. We would kind of go through that. If that 3/4 vote is not approved by the board, because we have those other resolutions, we can still pass a parameters resolution for the two borrows independently. So the idea of combining them into one borrow is we share the administrative costs. So it actually, the overall cost of the borrowing, those additional costs are less if we do one borrow as opposed to doing two. So it is something that we can do. If we were to do that, I could get a parameters resolution and we could put it on the county board agenda for that next meeting to vote on that. But as I have it right now, I only have the 12.3 agended. So if that were voted down, we'd either have to wait till that June meeting or hold an emergency meeting if we wanted to do it sooner. So those are options. The other option would be to agenda a $9.3 million parameters resolution. And if one was denied, then we would move on to the next one. That parameters resolution of 9.3 would only require a simple majority, not a 3/4. So that's kind of the difference between those two.
On the 3 million one, I thought that was usually on a 10-year note.
So even though they are going to be borrowed together,
Okay.
the 3 million will be on like a 10-year schedule, and the 9.3 will be on a 20-year schedule.
Okay.
Just
I want to
just
make
like
sure they're
as we
not
put
going to
them
both
together,
one
but
a year
yeah.
deal and
So yeah, they're not
Okay.
merged together as one, but
Yeah.
but I believe that shows up in the parameters. If not, I have
Okay.
a breakdown. But yes,
Just
that
wanted
is
to make sure.
the structure of that is still a 10 and a 20.
Okay.
Yep. Sold as one.
Sold as
Big.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess to kind of get into how those bonds are sold, so they'll, if we have a 20-year, they sell a 1-year, a 2-year, a 3-year, a 4-year, a 5-year, or multiple in each of those. And anybody buying that could buy the 10-year, they could buy the whatever. So that's kind of how we structure those. All right. So borrowing structure and the levy. Yeah, this is kind of getting into to exactly that.
Okay.
So we've talked about the debt service. So the debt service amount that we have is what we levy for on an annual basis. We've been targeting $5.2 million to do that. This $12.3 million borrow is structured, or can be structured, and we'll get to that later, to maintain that 5.2 million that we've always talked about. So that is how it was built. So that is the kind of that first item that, and we're not into the action items now, as I'm just kind of presenting this, but that is what that action item, that first action item is about, is that borrow, and it's really the combining of all of those. So next item is the 2027 capital improvement requests. So they total about $1.9 million. And just want to point out, so some of the funding sources as it relates to the capital improvement projects, fund balance, borrowing, and then operations. And then there's also the option of eliminating or delaying any capital improvement projects that are on the list. Capital improvement projects come from the departments through the committees, and the committees look them over and I guess approve them similar to the budget. But the capital improvement item comes from this committee. So everything has come here and you are the ones that are able to make any changes to it that you would like. So this isn't like a resolution that came from a standing committee that's going directly to the board. The committees are adopting something and then we're bringing that to executive. And executive is the originator of this resolution. So, all right, 1.943 million is what the total is for 2027. And I did invite any department heads to show up if they wanted to discuss this. If not, I can speak to many of these items as I've been having plenty of the conversations with them. So the first item on here is the mobile command. So this capital improvement request is for $300,000, and this is to refurb the mobile command unit that was purchased with grant funds in 2004. And to, I think, I don't know if we call it a refurb of the engine or a replacement of the engine, but it's really getting it in good working order for another 2 years. This was originally on the capital improvement budget as a replacement of this equipment. So the change to make it a refurb, which decreased it from like $800,000 or $900,000 down to about $300,000, is a change that was made this year. And I believe the Judiciary and Law Committee kind of determined that, or I think there was a discussion about it. No, Melissa made that decision then. Okay. So that's kind of where that is. And if you're unfamiliar, this is stored over at the North Fire Station, but we've recently been notified that they're not going to have storage. So if you know of a store, a heated storage location, we're on the search. So let Melissa know. So that is one item on there, and I mean, I'd welcome any questions or items on any of the capital improvement options as I go through this.
So is this the time we want to discuss this and put a
I-
yes or a no?
I think we can, so we're not necessarily at the adopting this particular thing,
Okay.
but I think to have a discussion about that, if you need any questions or want to look into that, because I think as we get down to the adoption of the capital improvement, we probably want to find like I'm going to make a motion to adopt it minus this, minus that,
Oh, that
plus
is-
this kind of item. So I would argue right now would be a decent time to have a discussion related to any of these items.
Does anybody have any questions? Supervisor Wilson?
Do you know, is the engine actually going out or they just want to replace it?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think it's broken or failing. I think it is, it's 22 years old. And this is one of those items that sits on the shelf until you need it. And when you need it, you want it working. So, I think utilization of this outside of, public relations events are minimal throughout the year.
I was gonna say, how many times has it been used in the last 5 years?
Well, I don't know the last 5 years,
Okay, 2
but
years.
in my conversations with Melissa, I think she said it was like 2 last year.
Okay.
So, and it is regional, so it is something that, may go to other counties or other items as well, so.
So do we charge them, other counties, or how does that work?
I would to say that.
Oh.
We should get rent.
Nope.
Nothing.
Oh, so I think that's,
So we supply.
once
it-
again, this was funded by a grant, so I think there's a component that
Homeland
we
Security,
can't
yeah.
necessarily charge for it
Right.
because of how we received that, but I
Mhm.
think as we evolve through this process and as we start making investments in that, I think charging for that may be options.
And since we got it through the Homeland Security deal, or, I mean, we gotta keep it then too, I take it?
No,
I guess at this time I wouldn't be in favor of doing this, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Supervisor John.
In favor if once we are putting our. if we-
Anyone else? Supervisor Kinnear.
Supervisor Wilsey, I'm just curious as to the reasoning so that, is there a different option or could you explain it a little bit, please?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd kind of want to talk to them and personally see the unit before I make a judgment on it. And if we're only using it maybe twice a year, I think the money could be spent better elsewhere.
And now that I have a storage issue and how much that's gonna cost us, that's another issue I think we gotta look at.
Mhm.
If it's viable to keep or not. I mean,
Yeah, and I don't want to necessarily speak for Melissa, but I think even, yeah, I think if some guidance as you come into that, which is being received here,
Mhm.
is go back and look at it. I don't think it's urgent that we needed to do it this year, but it's one of those, get it done before, as I mentioned before it becomes a problem.
Right.
Okay. All right. Sheriff's Department, squads and builds. You've all kind of been around. This has been a standing, CIP item for many years. This is something that as we did some policy updates to capital improvements last year, is something that is specifically called out. This, in my mind, is not a capital expense. However, it is something that the sheriff's department's operating budget isn't built to handle. So until we can kind of solve that operational issue, it maintains on this list.
Right.
Supervisor Bauer.
Just a question on the trucks. Why squad trucks and not just a squad car? I mean, would it be cheaper doing it that way? The trucks used for a special purpose?
So I think there's a couple reasons. First of all, it's hard to buy a car. They're not necessarily made anymore by many of the American manufacturers. But I think they've found from a space standpoint that the trucks are able to hold all of the equipment and other items that they have to bring along with them all of the time. And from a cost difference, it's really not that much. But they also then find some of the advantages that a truck would give them as they may go out on a field road or need some of the power that a truck might have. And I think the cost difference was minimal. I'm speaking on the sheriff's behalf here, and I don't necessarily know that, but that's what I've heard them talk about in the past as those types of conversations have come up. I also believe that they do give an option to the deputies between a truck and an SUV, and we see a mix of them out there, but it's kind of been the deputy's choice.
Are those always put out for bid or they use a state contract or how does that work?
We're working on that procedure. It has been utilizing a local vendor.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, next one.
IT, so you can see the 5-year option there. The 2027 request is I'm sorry. We made a last minute change. So you see bullets related to 2 items. However, the wireless is the only one that is in there for 2027. We moved oh no, that is the same one, isn't it, Jake? So the wireless is 300,000, including the network access control. Those are the systems that manage all of the wireless throughout all of the county buildings, and network access control is how we manage the I'm like, sorry, I'm trying to not do IT speak.
Yeah, tell us.
Appreciate that.
Right, you don't want me to talk about micro segmentation of our network. So what that network access control does is as you log into your computer or as your computer shows up into the county, we know whose computer it is and what they should have access to. So that network access control. So as a supervisor, you guys are logging in and guests, so you have access to what guests have access to. Employees, as they log into the computer, it knows who they are and whether they should have access to this resource, that resource, or another resource throughout the county. So we only give access to what you need access to, and so it's one of the big security controls. So that if somebody were to come in here, they're essentially locked into their own world where they don't have access to the important features on our network. So that's my layman's version of network access control, and wireless is wireless. So that system was purchased in 2020. It's approaching the end of a 7-year life cycle. It's going to have to be replaced, or we will start receiving, or we have to pay an annual fee, which will essentially be the equivalent, in a lot of cases, it's equivalent to about 2 or 3 years of a replacement cost. So they, with their costing, they pretty much put you on a replacement cycle.
Any questions on that? It's way over my head.
I feel like you're spoiled, Jake, that I can actually speak to that.
Supervisor Prashant.
Just because I have to. So that network access would also prevent, so have the robot vacuums, that means somebody couldn't come in.
That is 100% correct. Yeah, the Internet of Things items that exist out there live in their own world where they can't talk to anybody. Yep.
Thanks. Next.
All right. Facilities. So if you looked at this before Monday, it has changed. The Facilities Committee was on Monday, so I provided the information that I know was being presented to the committee. The committee did make some adjustments in the meeting. And apparently I screenshotted with a cell selected. So one of the things that was eliminated was the demolition of the old boiler room stack. So if you've been around since 2023, we've been putting aside $25,000 a year because at some point we were going to do that. And so the committee said, why are we going to do that? It's not urgent. Why are we putting aside that money? Let's do it when we need to do it. Or if we need to do it, because there was also a lot of talk about the historical significance of that space. So that item had been eliminated. This was my favorite part of the meeting. The white brick building, which is a gray building that was made with white bricks, is the building over by the rec park. It is the building that will get the mural put on it as part of the murals in Menominee. So it is the one to the north, has a leaking roof. So that is used. It was most recently used for the electronics recycling project, but it also is used for storage for other county equipment over the winter. So sorry, that's a 2028 project. I won't focus, or no, that is, sorry, 2027, 35,000. So that roof is actively leaking. So we're looking to replace that. Then we get the red brick building, which is a gray building that was made with red bricks. So this is the building to the south of the white brick building. And I did not know that until the meeting on Monday, and it's just funny to me. You would think a red brick building, you would look for a red, no. Also kind of same situation, that roof is actively leaking, is used for county storage. So looking to do that. And moving down, the government center front parking lot seal coating and striping. So So this project, along with the Judicial Center parking lot chip sealing there, are both projects that were much larger in previous CIPs, and where there was a complete like replacement of, well, obviously we did replace this parking lot, but the Judicial Center one, they were looking to completely tear it up and redo it through some consultation with the highway department and people over there. They felt that sealing and chip sealing would extend the life of those by about 10 years and at a small fraction of the price. So the Judicial Center, if you haven't been over there, is in pretty rough shape. So this is a good one. And as we talk about the Government Center, that was one that we did a few years ago. So this is really about preventative work so that we don't get into that same situation. If you've been out here, you'll start to see that it looks like a parking lot that was done a few years ago and is starting to find its cracks and pieces like that. So that's what we're trying to be preventative in that regard. Those are the 2027 items from facilities.
Anybody got any questions on any of those?
Sorry, the other changes I did highlight in red, which is related to fleet vehicles, which were taken off. The fleet car replacement was taken off, and that was a change that had been discussed by the facilities committee as to a lease versus buy. And I think a determination of is we don't have enough information yet, so we're not going to go make that change. So. Anything else?
Looks good.
All right. Oh, those are long slides to explain what I just said. Now the highway building, probably not a lot to talk about here.
Let's skim by that one.
So, Dustin, you might as well just come up. No, all right, all right.
Where is it? Where is it?
So, what has been brought forward by the highway committee is the building of a new 72,000 square foot storage facility, which will be outside of the existing highway building. That will include a automated wash bay. And then in addition to that would be a remodel of the existing highway building, which would happen after the first building is done. And that remodel would kind of move the shop into the current storage area and update the shop. And then we would make some changes to break rooms and some of the office structures and move the conference room out of Dustin's office. So there's your basic summary, right? So 2027 CIP then includes $863,000, which are design costs. So it's a percentage of the overall cost of that project. And then you'll see in 2028 is the actual project. The $500,000 for the backup generator is also related to that project, that if we were to add the square footage, we would need more generator in order to do that. So that is something that would only exist if you were to do that project.
So yeah, basically we have to approve the 27, if we're not going to approve the 28, we can't do the 27. That's what we're looking at. Couple reasons why we went to the highway. That's just because I know a little bit about it. I know Kelly knows. The original one was built in 84, 45,000 square feet. The trucks don't fit in there anymore. It's too big. It's way too small for what we need. The mechanics area is way undersized. They have to move trucks in and out just to get another vehicle in there. So when we looked at that, to build a storage facility that would be somewhat heated, it's 50 degrees, 55, something like that. So we could actually store most of our equipment in there. Another reason why we would discuss that is the Rock Falls shop down there is kind of extremely old and extremely expensive to heat and maintain. So the thought is to actually close that area down there, and we can't close it because we don't have any place for these trucks. So we thought about building a new facility up here that would store some of those vehicles up here, and put most of our stuff under cover. In there at the end, if we had another facility, the command center bus that we have that now it needs a home would probably have room in here to fit. And then with the sheriff's department, wanted more storage. We talked about them having the 16,000 square foot building right there in the middle, having them take over more of that. They already have the north part of that going up there. If they need more storage, which they do, they could have some of that as long as we built this new building larger. We could store more of our stuff in one building that way. That's kind of the background behind all that, but what do you guys got for questions? Supervisor Bassan.
We have the big done in the same.
So if we were to do that borrow in 28, we would typically have 2 years to expend the funds. Be able to do that.
Supervisor Morris.
Can you just remind me how many years this has been on the docket? Is it 3? 2?
It has certainly been, I know it's at least been discussed for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's been on the CIP it was moved last year.
Right.
It was to
Right.
be done last year and kind of pushed forward a year. I don't know if that was executive or the committee that moved it forward, but yeah. So.
Then Supervisor Wilsey.
Have you priced a new one? And what burden would that have on taxes if we did it?
I have those slides.
You do, okay.
Yeah. So, so I'm gonna, I'll kind of skip
just-
forward.
I walked around with Brent yesterday and there's a lot of going from building to building to building. I don't know if
Oh,
adding more buildings
so
is,
you're talking about just
yes,
remove everything and all new building?
yes.
No, I don't have that, sorry.
Well, we know what other counties have spent on that, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess just to put that into perspective, so these are the latest and greatest, new facilities at, Barron, Eau Claire and Jackson County to put it in perspective to build a whole new facility. Jackson County is actually in the process. I believe they just opened bids, recently. But they were estimating $34 million, to complete a 118,000 square foot facility. That would be basically what you see there for your equipment storage, as well as office space, cold storage buildings, outlot buildings. So on average, you'd be looking at probably 30+ million for a brand new facility to meet our needs, based on similar square footage that, it's kind of in line with, Barron and Jackson, County. Somewhere in between there. I don't think we would need a huge facility like 223,000 square foot, but something that would meet our needs, you'd be looking at 30 million plus.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have one there.
Supervisor Dean.
Looking at the cost of Barron's and looking at the cost of Jackson's, it appears that roughly half the square footage and it's more money. So that's the percentage of increase in the building costs, right? Basically.
Yeah, you can tell if year after year costs keep getting higher and higher. And exponentially, originally, I believe Jackson County's was estimated at 40 million. And then obviously they started taking things out of it to reduce the cost. So they don't get any cheaper regardless of what size building or what type of building it is.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so assume that we would, remodel or whatever we're gonna do, how's that gonna service us going forward 10 years, 20 years? Any idea?
So theoretically, the new building addition would have a lifespan of approximately what they say is 50 to 70 years for a steel building. The remodel, hopefully, like I said, it's 42 years old currently, the building. We'd be hopeful to get another 40 years out of it. Concrete structures like that have 80 to 100-year lifespan theoretically.
And then specifically, what would you see? I mean, the change in equipment since 84 to now, and now what, how about do you have any idea how we would be fixed for space 20, 30 years from now, depending on
So
the size of the equipment, if it makes sense?
So the larger building, so there was basically a needs analysis completed by a consultant. At that point in time, they looked at multiple options to meet our needs. There was option one was basically just to get all your equipment under a roof, but no expansion. So, and then option two was you would have some expansion, but then obviously there came into discussion with the sheriff's needs and all this other stuff. And then there was option three, which would accommodate all of our equipment and extra storage space for materials, as well as if we would ever add fleet vehicles, like extra equipment. My goal is to not add equipment. My goal is to get rid of equipment, just based on the sheer cost of this stuff. But obviously, there's a need of most of this equipment that we have. And like I said, the option that was presented would have our needs into the future, is what the original needs analysis told us.
Yeah, because I think we started with what, about a 49,000 square foot facility that would just be barely big enough?
I want to say it was 36,000
36.
option one, and then option two was 54,000, and then it went to 72,000 for any future expansion and needs that we would ever need. So,
And that's why we want 72, because we want to
Yeah.
have the next 10 years, if we got another outline shop that we want to not continue with, we have room to bring those trucks back here versus building another or spending a lot of money on outline shops. So,
well, and just to put it in perspective too, like if the sheriff's department has extra space needs, this would help accommodate that. Emergency management, we can house that vehicle in this building. So as long as they let us use it every once in a while with a plow on the front of it.
should be able to mount and plow on there somehow.
You can go park it out there as a little heater and
Fire more else.
Yes, Dustin, would the renovated building take away the piles of sand and things that are outside under tarps or not?
It would not address that. It would basically address equipment and stuff like that needs to be inside, like concrete bags and stuff
Gotcha.
like that. But anything that's stored outside with lime rock piles or sand piles, that would all stay outside. Otherwise, I'd love that, but that's an extra ask.
All right. So I guess I was back and forth on how to structure these slides. So I just want to, I'll maybe continue down that highway project and what that looks like from a funding standpoint. But we do have to kind of talk about the 2027 CIP as well. So the highway project funding, as we've run that through analysis with our municipal advisor, to borrow for that project will increase the debt levy. There's not a way around it. So as the projections that we've put together based on those numbers is about a $1 million increase to the debt levy moving forward. So from 5.2 to 6.2 million. So math. And so I think that ultimately that kind of comes down to what does that mean for the taxpayer? So we talk a lot about mill rates and what that is. So this math is kind of showing you how we calculate that mill rate. So our mill rate for sorry, I was just talking with Brittany about this, the 26 levy. So the levy that we just did. So that is $25.2 million is what we levied. The total valuation, which is the 2025 equalized value, which is typically the year, it's actually 24 values that show up there, is about 5.8 billion. So the mill rate is really just dividing those, but it's per $1,000 of value. So that's kind of how we get that, and it kind of shows up. I think we do that because like what that really means is it's $4.30 per $1,000, which maybe back when they first created this calculation was a useful number, but not so much. So we can kind of extrapolate that number. So so if the levy were to increase by $1 million, if we do that same math, that mill rate comes out to $4.47. So you have a 17-cent per $1,000 difference in the mill rate. So math that out for a $300,000 house.
$51.
Yeah.
51.
51.
Yep. So we math that out for a $300,000 house is $51. So it's about $17 per 100,000. Is what the impact would be to the taxpayer of Dunn County if we were to increase that by $1 million. There's obviously 100 other things that will impact people's taxes and property taxes, but and that's, value of your house versus all of these sorts of things. But when we get it down to that, that's kind of that number that you would look at to be what people can expect.
Yeah, and I just did a quick analysis on some of the townships I do, and I mean, equalized value, I mean, for a typical house is ranges from like 250,000 to 350,000 on Red Cedar. But most of them are right around that 300,000, 330 on Rock Creek. Sheridan's just under 300. Sand Creek's just about 250. Stanton's 343. So it is pretty close. The average house in, well, what I do is right around that 300,000, just to give you a reference point. That's why I use 300,000 when doing that.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. And so I talked a little bit as we went through that first debt structure I spoke a little bit about this, and this is, I think, a decision that this committee or the board can make. There's a question about timing as it relates to this and how we structure that borrow. So if we were to borrow that $12.3 million and structure that to be a 5.2 debt service amount in 2027, which is what the plan is. Then when that next borrow happens, you're going to go to that 6.2 million debt service in 2028. So from a taxpayer percentage, that means you're going up that $51 in that year. There are options available as we structure the 12.3 that we could slowly ramp that up. So I provided an example here of 2027 debt service could be 5.4, target 5.8 in 28, and then get up to 6.2 in 29. You're elected. And I think that's a matter of, is it easier to take that gradual increase or just take it all at once? That is an option that is available. But that option needs to be determined before we do the 12.3 borrow.
Some input? A graph
You
for,
know, the graph that we got from our financial advisors on our borrowing.
I thought.
So I mean, this would be
Yeah.
steady.
I'd be interested in how many years and the pay down,
Oh,
you know.
yes, I have that document. I can provide that. Well, I have that as we've seen it before, the debt structure, the payments of the
Yeah.
principals and the
Right.
interest on all of those borrows. So I have one of those with, based on a $20 million highway borrow in 2028 that I can share with the committee and with the full board if you think that that's valuable, but I mean, it's going to show you 6.2 million down that right side. And that's typically when we talk about the graph, that's the graph. If we didn't do that borrow, we actually have a bit of a dip that would start to happen.
Supervisor McKellar.
I guess you know, on the political side of it, I think it's probably simpler to take one bite at the apple than explain it twice. One bigger step rather than two little steps, I think is just, it's a simpler communications problem.
Any other input on that?
Yeah,
Supervisor.
I have a question on going forward. Okay, this is two big things, but do we have anything else coming down the pike? That's gonna be a huge, cost to the county that you have any inkling about?
So based on the planning that we have done, I think, the biggest pieces that we have, and Supervisor Prochnow alluded to them, are some of the highway outbuildings. As you look at this building, being fairly young in its, after being refurbed, the neighbors of Dunn County is getting into the middle ages. But we're really working on setting up their finances so that their fund balance will be able to manage the repair. So roofs are really like kind of the next thing that we're looking at for those neighbors' buildings, is their shingle roofs. They have a 20-year life expectancy. So I don't see anything big in that regard. The Judicial Center just got a new roof. We're doing the HVAC project within that. We're doing some carpet replacement, but the bones of that building are essentially going to be in a better long-term place. I think capacity would be the next component of that. We have extra capacity. If you've been up to the admin wing, we have extra capacity within this building, but I think capacity within the Judicial Center would be the other kind of question potentially, but I don't know that
But if the city moves out of there, that will give us more capacity, or?
it would give us more capacity and
Per se?
and a loss of revenue.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that would give you some capacity. But I think as I look at who's squished a little bit there, obviously there's probably some room for the sheriff's department. 911 is one that we would look at, but if you go back into the DA's office and the clerk of court's office, those are the ones that are kind of packed in. And that's one of the, so if you move people out of the basement of the Judicial Center, you don't necessarily kind of solve that problem upstairs.
When was that built? I keep forgetting. I don't know.
97 or 98.
Okay, that's what I saw. I thought it was 97. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Any other ideas, Supervisor McCullough?
The only other thing, just, and this is something that I'm sure will come up over the next couple of years that we have discussed, that might be a borrow, and a large borrow item would be if we do decide to move forward on solar at some point, depending on electricity costs. That's the only other thing I can think of that wasn't covered by Dan's summary, and that's if we decide to do that.
Mhm. Yeah. Any other questions? All right.
All right, so go back to the CIP. So 1.9, I know there's been some talk about that elimination of the medical or the emergency vehicle, which would decrease that by about 300,000. So you're still looking at about 1.6. We are still working on our unaudited balances as we've rolled out this new system. We have 2025 data entered in both systems, so we have to decouple that and make sure that we're not double counting it. And that's kind of the work that's happening right now as we're working with our auditors on 2025. As we look at as I say, I don't have a number that I even want to put on the slide there, but I will tell you that my expectation is that we are not going to have the unassigned fund balance in excess of that 35% that the ordinance and policies have identified. So as we have in policy, it is not at your discretion necessarily, unless you want to change the policy, to allocate fund balance that would bring us below 35%. In fact, you have to develop a plan in order to get it back up over 35%. So I would say from a fund balance standpoint, I don't think that that's very very healthy. So I would not expect that fund balance is going to be an option for funding the capital improvement projects. Now, I'll make a caveat. So we have, and I think I've talked about it a little bit. I know those of you related to highway are likely familiar with this, but we call the County Road and Bridge Fund. So that is the money that is levied or collected in other ways that goes towards county highways. That fund, I like to call it, it's kind of a leveling. So there's a fund balance that is held in there, and if highway has a good year or bad year, that fund balance can kind of handle that. And that allows us to provide a more consistent amount of levy to the highway department year in, year out, even though like they may have a bridge project that's a little high. We can provide the same amount of levy, the fund balance uses that, and then we can replenish it the next level. So this county road and bridge fund balance is really that. It is at about 2 million, or we're projecting that to be at about 2 million. That's pretty high. As opposed to, I think we really look at that one being probably closer to like 1. And we're really just looking to handle a little bit of that extra within that one. This is not what they use in order to buy replacement vehicles. They have another fund that kind of manages that. So this is really just that leveling. So I do think that there is some capacity if you wanted to utilize the fund balance here to pay for the design of the highway building, that would be appropriate. You cannot use these funds for other things. So the funds that have gone into the County Road and Bridge Fund have to go towards County Road and Bridge. That's in the statute.
Yeah.
So
Can't use those for IT.
except for in the highway department.
Well, in the highway, yeah.
So that could be an option for the $860,000 related to that,
Which would bring it down.
which now brings us to, I gotta keep doing math, brings us at about 800. About 800,000
Right.
of remaining costs that would have to be figured out in some way, shape, or form. Other options, borrowing. So obviously we're borrowing $3 million typically for highway projects. This is obviously something that has to be approved every year. I also should point out that the $6.2 million increase assumes we continue to borrow $3 million every year.
Right.
So, so $3 million for highway projects, that does not all have to go to highway projects. You could do that. It would decrease the amount that is allocated for highway projects. And potentially, I told Dustin I was going to say it before I even put it on this slide. So We borrow $3 million and we always say we've kind of earmarked that for highway projects. It's just borrowing, right? So you could say we're going to borrow $3 million for highway and CIP. We use 800,000 of that 3 million for that, which leaves the balance of 2.2 million
For the highway.
for highway projects. That is going to decrease the amount of highway projects that can be done, but it's an option. So wanted to kind of put that out. So that's another way of paying for those CIP projects. And we do need to make sure, we believe all of those are good, that they also need to meet the state requirement for a capital purchase. We can't, so talk about the $25,000 that was set aside for the smokestack, right? We can't borrow $25,000 to set aside $25,000. We have to actually buy something. So, so that would be, that is an option. And then operations, identifying, this is a really bad coloring on that slide. So it's really decreasing the levy reliance on other county operations, right? So this is the cutting of operations would be the only other way of identifying that funding. So,
Which I think we'll need for the general budget, not CIP.
Yeah.
That'd be my opinion. If we need to.
yep. Yep. So, so those are kind of the options around CIP. I don't think we have to determine. I've kind of always struggled. I think we can talk about what the plan is in order to fund the capital improvements. But as we get into the budget time, that's when the rubber really hits the road.
Right.
So, so I would propose, as we kind of put that forward to the full board, we're adopting the plan to do those projects, and we will identify the funding source later. But I did want to kind of talk through them with you because it will impact those future decisions. And this is really the time to say we want to decrease those options or not. So. Any questions on all of that?
Or basically anywhere we could cut $800,000, but that would be the other option.
Right. Yeah, anywhere that you could cut $800,000 that could be used for those items.
Yeah.
And as you bring up, right, you're still going to have salary and benefits increases and things like that that are going to
for that. That's
to factor in.
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying we can cut CIP another 800,000, but I don't see how that's going to happen. So.
Right.
Unless you guys have any ideas.
Yep.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, thank you. Not on the funding part right now, but the really large project for the highway, that's just difficult for me. But we don't have a whole lot of choice. The other part, the only other thing we looked at very carefully was the emergency vehicle. And it kind of sounded like we needed more information. So I'd kind of like to know, what repairs actually needed. Can we recoup repair costs from the other counties? And what can we do for storage? So those things will all affect whether I want to go forward with that. I hope we can get that information
So
eventually.
yeah, we can get that information. And I guess I would say that I think it could make sense. Obviously, you'd be pushing this project to 2028, which already has a big price tag on it. But I think it is something that we could wait, get that information and utilize that towards 2028. Or if you'd like to keep it on, I mean, the full board can obviously still make an amendment to that capital. I can get that information and provide it as part of the full board. So
2028, would we know what we get back on the geothermal thing by that? Geothermal rebate by that time?
we
Potentially?
should. Yeah, so
I mean, that might help
Yeah, yeah, if that
2028 is
project,
what I'm
if
trying to
that
say.
project is completed by the end of this year, which is their intent, then we would be able to file for that in 2028, which would, think of it as like your 2020, sorry, in 27.
27,
So think of
right.
it as a tax return from the year before, right? So
Mhm.
this is, so yeah, I would say we would have a pretty good idea around there.
I mean, I think that would help.
Yeah. So
with
the
that.
other,
Right.
yeah, the other part as it relates to capital improvements as we go forward, I'll say this in a public meeting. So the Elk Creek Solar Project is moving forward.
Mhm.
They just applied for addresses today. And we've been meeting with them, emergency management and the local fire department have been putting together an emergency plan as they go through that. So they are going to start construction this year, this fall. Production though is probably, as we look at that, that's probably more of a 28, 29 type
Yeah,
where we
definitely.
start to see those revenues. But
Yeah.
I consider that to be a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. And I,
Both projects or just?
just the one,
Just
the Elk
Elk
Creek,
Creek.
which is the first one, yeah. Which has now been purchased by Excel. So Excel
Right.
is the company that is doing that. And I was speaking with Supervisor McCullough earlier today that, you know, as I look at that and as we talk about capital improvements, my thought is when that money comes in, that is CIP money. And we just dedicate those funds to be able to make, to not be in the position of trying to figure out how we're going to fund all of our capital projects moving forward. And maybe it's not all of it, is look at it. Obviously, this is up to you as a board to decide how you do that. But I do think as we look at having a capital improvement plan and knowing that we are going to have capital expenses and what they're going to be every year, we should have budget space available and predetermined as to how much we have to do that.
Supervisor McCall?
Yeah, one of the things I like about that thought is I very much doubt that there is going to be a year where we're not looking at capital improvements that will be at least $1 million. So
Yeah.
if we just, bite the bullet and say, we can put this directly into capital improvements, it makes some other budget decisions, I think, a little bit easier.
Yeah, for sure.
So that is, I guess, my staff report. Uh, um,
All right. Hey. Supervisor Steen?
Would it be possible to take what you want to do here, square footage, and project what it would cost if we didn't do it until next year or the year after or the year after or the year after, so that people could see that? I think sometimes to be a good fiduciary, responsible person for the county or for any municipality, you might want to look at that, because it might make more sense to do what we got to do rather than to see what it's going to cost us if we don't do it. If that makes any sense.
Well,
we have those numbers.
you mean like doing the project separate?
No, I'm just saying, same project. If we don't do it this year, this is what it's going to cost next year. If we don't do it in 2 years.
Oh, yeah, okay, so the
Estimated
cost,
cost.
yeah, because
Estimated
they
cost.
they typically go up
Projecting
5 to 10%,
inflation.
yeah, 5 to 10% a year is what we're looking at.
Yeah, messaging as a messaging tool rather than,
Yeah, I think that just, this is a big chunk of change here. And you want to do the right thing by the county. That's why I asked the question. We got any other things coming down the pike? Well, you want to, sometimes to spend a large amount, you're better off long-term, because, you are.
Costs keep going up.
I mean, if you feel that,
Yeah.
and I think you should have that discussion, because you don't want to be scared off by the money. You want to look at what's it going to accomplish for me, and what's it going to, do long-term. Am I smarter to do it now, or am I smarter to piecemeal it? So,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, and I would say that, as my thoughts as this goes forward is really a marketing type campaign around, this is the decision that that the board is wrestling with. I would not wait until after, you guys get to tell me no, but my thought is I wouldn't wait till after the vote. It's get that information out to let the public know that this is what is being talked about and thought about and what those impacts are going to be. I think we've seen activities happening in the area that were made without the public having kind of a full knowledge of that. And I think we need to learn from those lessons and get that out. So I think as we move forward and as the board adopts that, we would look to utilize our communications contract to start.
I
get that
agree 100% because the board is, they're gonna ask you, well, what's going on? Why are we doing this?
Mhm.
And whether they would like it or not, if your opinion would be like my opinion, it probably would be, is that I think we're smarter to do it this way, but that's, that's just me. And I think reasonable people might see the logic behind that approach, Takes a while to soak in too.
Yeah, I have been informing all of my towns and villages and they've been fairly supportive of going forward with it. I've explained it to them and they've been fairly on board with all that. So it is getting out there.
Right.
Some of the numbers that they hear are wrong, but it is getting out there.
Right.
But we do
Yep.
need to get
Yep.
more information out there.
And there's a wonderful newspaper reporter that I guarantee is listening to this recording.
Exactly.
That will provide a great summary of
Yes,
this discussion.
Sure, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
And I agree. I think this really needs to be carefully sold. But I would much rather do that with my constituents once rather than twice. I think it makes much more sense.
All right.
So
Moving on, or where are we at?
now we are at 5C.
Oh, yeah,
Jen-
5C. Okay,
Jen and
here we go.
Okay, so I think Dan actually summarized a lot of kind of where we've been and the status we're at right now with this process pretty well. Understanding that there are kind of varying levels of comfort with the approach that we were looking to take today, that we had proposed. I have them printed out here. Perhaps instead, we can talk about 3 different options, and then as a committee, you can give us direction on how to move forward with regard to the process of setting these strategic lenses. I think Garrett Zastable from UW Extension has been consulting with us throughout this process, has been helping us build this. It's also being piloted in other counties. And as Dan said, we are making adjustments as we go. We want this to be as effective as possible. And so with that being said, there's been, I think, concerns on either side of starting from scratch and having a long process, a long workshop for setting lenses. There's also concerns about not investing that time. And so my suggestion for options could be we could press the pause button today, instead plan for a workshop style session. Garrett has some ideas and he can speak to what that could look like. Another option could be to move forward today with kind of the starting point lenses that we had provided in the packet. There was a brief description around each. The intention for today was to do a voting exercise around those to narrow it down from, we have 9 here, down to 5. And then the third option would be to not set any strategic lenses. I think that's on the table. I wouldn't recommend that. We are still looking for direction come the time for September and October budget conversations, even going into 2028, trying to strategically approach the anticipated fiscal constraints that we're anticipating. So I will ask Garrett to kind of speak to an alternative option for what a workshop could look like.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. As Jenna has been updating me on some of the feedback that she and Dan have been getting. One of the things that came to mind for me, and then even hearing the earlier conversation today, is I think guidance from this board or this committee as far as whether you all want the whole board involved in this kind of lens setting process, or if you're comfortable having it remain with the executive committee board. So that's kind of one of the decision points that I identified listening to you all. The other thing that I heard, especially with Jenna, is having a more deliberative process, which ultimately takes more time. And so the question is, does this body, one, want to engage the entirety of the board in the process, or are there other partners involved? And two, how much time is this committee wanting to spend on this particular exercise? What I had envisioned and shared with Jenna was what's known as a values house exercise. So where you have a list of values that are kind of grounded in the work of county government, and we go through kind of the individual process, share in small groups, and then try to come to a consensus on where like our top 3 to 5 as we move forward. In many ways, it gets us to the same output as what we had anticipated today, but it gives you all deeper time to have conversations with one another. And so once again, it's kind of, I'm putting it back onto you all as far as what is it that you all want in this?
Since I have been the loudest complainer about the process, I do think this is an exercise that should remain with the executive committee. I think it probably would be futile to take it to the full board. I think the decision should be made here. Nonetheless, the decision about strategic lenses, about our core values, remember that we adopted those kinds of things are really important, and it should set some parameters to do this. Yes, I would support the idea of doing a separate workshop. Other members can comment on how much time they want to spend. But, I heard Supervisor Wilsey say he had to leave at 5. We can't do it in a half an hour. So, and I don't want to just dismiss the idea of the executive committee providing some parameters and guidance for this process.
Okay.
That fell flat.
Yeah. No, I'd like to see more what's got to take place, I guess. So, but we could always schedule another meeting, I guess. How soon does this have to be?
So could I propose an idea of we kind of go through the activity that has been put together,
Like,
and let's see how the discussion and what the outcomes come out with, and once we see that, then I think well, we'll be a little bit more informed, right? Just because we did it doesn't mean that it has to be something that's determined. It's intended to just provide us a little bit of guidance. And I would say, I think a part of this was an intent to try and, as we've talked in others, is to take a little bit of the white off the paper. And so quite frankly, yeah, I mean, this was probably doing a lot of the work that we would want this committee to do.
No.
And we would welcome the committee doing that, but I think we were like, well, let's start you with something and have you work from that, or we could start from a blank. So let's start with it, and if it doesn't work,
yeah,
we can go the other route. Yeah.
Yeah.
May I
Yep.
say one, and with sort of 2 more things. There's at least one thing in here that's insulting, which speaks to vulnerability protection and speaks about handing off core services to churches and nonprofits, none of whom have the resources to take that kind of stuff off. I think that's insulting. And the other things that are not in here at all are our core values that we adopted and taking care of our staff, which is pretty important.
Sure, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you. In follow-up with what Diane said, I think that's a spot where we can add another lens here. There's 9. We should have 20 or 30. No, add one more, and that'd be dealing with staff and retention and everything else that has a great deal of impact on our bottom line. And just it's the right thing to do, and that's what our core values and action says. So I agree with you, Diane.
Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, and yes, and I think to your point, Supervisor Kinnear, add, remove, change any of these items. Like I said, this was taking the white off the paper.
This is the first round. To make it better.
Well, and I think it's worth noting, sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Not fully used to that again yet. The bucket exercise is we did it this morning at Highway, and we did it before, all of the vast quantities of written material. And it is a useful tool for narrowing focus quickly, because it allows you to say, if everybody in this room picks 3 things off of this list, that tells us something. If it's a shotgun approach, that tells us something else about that next step, how we might have that conversation. And at some point, it comes down to, we have to make some choices. I am sure some people are going to be unhappy about whatever the answers to those choices are. I'm sure I'll be unhappy about some of those answers, but making the choices that make people unhappy is the gig.
So what's the process here?
Okay, so what this would look like in practice is, I'd give you 4 coins here, and then you would place a coin into the bucket that you would see as a priority area. You're able to put 4 coins in one bucket if you feel strongly about a certain thing. But then at the end, we'll tally that up to identify kind of where the top 1, 2, or 3 areas land,
So when you
and
say,
have discussion about that.
so when you say priority, the ones that we want to protect, or the ones you want to look at, or what?
Yes. Some of them, some of them would include kind of protecting the current service level. Maybe there's going to be a wide range of things that would fall underneath either of these categories. But it would be with the intention of either protecting or basically prioritizing that lens as you move through receiving the work from each committee and making decisions.
So no one will really know whether it's about protecting current service levels or making a cut, right?
I think it,
Microphone.
it is, so you're not putting, right, so the most coins, if you will, in a bucket is intended to keep those related items prioritized. Less quarters would be considered lower priority. So more votes, priority, less votes, lower priority.
Buckets and lenses are the same thing?
Yes, so each lens is printed over there, and it has a bucket where you would place your coin to indicate
Okay,
your
so
vote.
if we just suggested we add a lens, how can that occur?
We just added a bucket and wrote down
So I added
that
bucket for
suggestion.
staff well-being based on the recommendation. Are there additional, I think, kind of strategic lenses?
Well, could I just talk a little bit about the staff well-being? I would think about it as more providing county workers with adequate tools. And then, the focus is on making sure our choices allow workers to get their jobs, to do their job, and our focus is to retain employees. So it's a little bit more than Staff well-being. Staff well-being. Um, Morale matters, but, go ahead.
Yeah, I think all that would go into staff and well-being would be all that, but Supervisor McCollum.
So if I might, so when we, I've got three things that are all interconnected. Bear with me for a minute.
You've been through this, so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
speak.
the initial version of this list was like 35 items, and that's not manageable. So this was, to just, let me finish. So we wanted to, so this was a way of narrowing down to, and most of these are like, okay, this and this loosely go in this same category, so let's bring it down to that item. So that's one of the reasons for the shorter list. The way this worked at Highway today, which I think is a useful illustration, because I can just, so we had 6 items, infrastructure, grant writing, modernization. I don't remember what the 6 are offhand, but they were all important things. And one of the things that I would have expected was a little bit broader spectrum, but by forcing people to make a choice with fewer resources than there are buckets, we actually ended up with 2 very clear, these were the most important things to the committee by a lot, and a couple that almost got no coins whatsoever. So this is really an exercise in forcing you to prioritize with limited resources. Now, we're going to have those discussions as well, but this was really a useful tool. It reduces the discussion space, I think, in a way that is useful for a 29-member board and a 9-member executive committee. Because we can discuss this, I guarantee you, for the next 10,000 hours and not come to full consensus. But if we can narrow down what we're talking about, it makes it much simpler to come to consensus on what's left.
And I don't know if Garrett, I'm sorry, I didn't ask.
Go ahead. This is open.
And maybe Garrett has another bucket, because what's in here is public protection and health. It emphasizes public safety. And what about the health and welfare of our citizens? I don't see it in here other than vulnerability protection, and you've already heard my comments about that. I think it's insulting. I'm not seeing it in here. And I think that's a core function.
Great, so what's your proposed bucket name? Let's add one.
We have extra buckets.
Do you have an extra bucket? I don't know, whatever.
Right. I would,
Wellness and well-being,
Yeah.
whatever.
I would suggest changing the vulnerability protection one, because I think that that was where kind of what I was thinking as it related to how those, as we look at that bucket, that was where I was saying that some of those items would have fallen. But I would say welcome any terminology change. I think the big thing is, outside of the name that we call it, is what that lens kind of represents. And to make sure that we're all on the same page about what that is.
Yeah, I wrote it down, but it's in my printer. I can't remember what I did. Wellness, well-being.
Community health and well-being,
Sure, fine. I'll take that.
and as a substitute for the vulnerability
As
protection.
a substitute for the vulnerability protection,
Yeah.
which is really uncomfortable.
Clarify.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
would that then also be, because we talk about the required legal things we have to do up under the constitutional and judiciary, but the mandated services in other places don't really seem to fall in there as well. Like the vulnerability protection doesn't really talk about anything mandated that we have to do on the health side. So does that fall?
If I could, I think there's levels of mandate across all of these areas. It's definitely another layer to the budget conversation when it gets there. There are things that absolutely have to be done. There are things that are mandated that are not sufficiently funded, and that's all absolutely a part of the conversation. This isn't guaranteeing that any services that don't fall within the top 2 would be cut by any means. We would still want to maintain the level of mandate that is required, absolutely. And that is what we are hoping provides, hoping the service catalogs provide context to exactly what things are mandated and why. And if we're performing services above the mandated level, making sure that the impact of that and or not doing that is also clear in those discussions. And that's happening at the committee level.
Just to
Yeah, go ahead.
So if we're already focusing on the mandated across the board, then the first one seems a little redundant if we're like, well, we know we have to do mandated, but the first one talks about doing specific mandated.
I think that's related to, well, lots of words, lots of words get in here that have multiple definitions, but I think that's really focusing towards constitutional officers and the courts. As opposed to the overall statutory requirements that we have as a county overall. It's specifically related to the clerk of courts and the district attorney and the courts in general is kind of where that lens falls, if that makes sense.
It's also intended to cover really any constitutional officer, including county clerk, treasurer, register of deeds as well. Happy to make any changes to that too.
More questions?
I was just gonna say, sort of the discussion we have to have is mostly about the stuff that is not very specifically mandated. If we have to do it, we have to do it. There's not an enormous amount of, are we going to do the thing we have to do? Yes, no? There's not a lot of point in having a discussion about the stuff that we absolutely have to do. There's there's absolutely a point in having a discussion about what level we're going to do it at.
Right.
But one of the problems that we had with the strategic planning process now a decade ago is we had a prioritization exercise that included, what is your priority for this thing that you have to do? There's no point in, and what is your priority for this thing that funds itself?
Mhm.
Again, not really part of the discussion
Mhm.
about the money that we are spending. And just, you have to narrow it down to a discussion you can have.
I gave 4 quarters, but if you wanted more quarters, I have 1 roll left, so I can't give you more than 2 unless. But that is also an option.
So what's the next process?
So I think if you're at a point where you're comfortable going through this practice exercise, then you can get up and place the coins in the buckets that you see as highest priorities.
Don't steal my quarters.
And Jen, if you get me in here and find that there are a lot more orders than you started with.
Nobody?
I'll spread the rest of Jenna's corners.
It's
Yeah.
not the county.
Well, no, I'm just picturing you might end up with, some of, like.
All extra quarters go to Gary.
This isn't so specific. Last time I was.
Okay, we got results. Back to meeting.
So we had 9 votes in community health and well-being.
25.
7 votes in protecting what we own, 6 votes in fix it now, pay later, and 6 votes in staff well-being. So these being the things that, as we're looking at program service catalogs and the external trends, so opportunities and threats that are impacting the service areas, that you all respectively lead the oversight of, these would be the lenses that we would kind of approach that work through. And then as we come back together, thinking about these being the 4 ways that we make or anchor our conversations around trade-offs. Recognizing that there was, community health and well-being at the very top.
And just to clarify, there was also scattering, right?
Yes.
Well,
Was there a
there are
fifth?
also like 1 or 2 here, 1 or 2 there, but
Yeah.
these are the ones that,
There's only 8 left, period.
yeah.
That's some quick math.
Maybe somebody didn't vote.
He was a math teacher.
All right.
He was a math teacher.
I'd like to know how many quarters went out.
I made money on this operation.
Gary is digging in his pockets. All right, so where we go now?
So this is, I guess, part of where we had talked about that, the activity and saying, well, so we went through this, we identified these, and this is kind of the, and I heard some discussion whether bias or not, or how that is, but ultimately these are the feelings kind of this group related to those. So I thought that there is an option from the executive committee standpoint to get a feel for the full board. And so that was that agenda item to say, do you want to take these 4 items and present them to the board and kind of see within those 4 where the leanings of the larger group is in a similar activity, this is the group that creates the budget that goes to the full board, but the board has to approve it.
Mhm.
So, to have a feel for where they are, I think could be helpful. That doesn't mean that we change the order based on them. It helps inform you where the full board is thinking. You could bring all, I think we ended on 10. You could bring all 10 to the full board if you wanted. You could take that set of 4, or you could say not at all. But that was kind of that thought as we talked about involving the full board with this piece of the process. And don't forget, you still get to do whatever you want. So
All right, where do we stand?
I vote for not at all on that.
Any other input?
I guess to Supervisor Morehouse's point, do we want to have a longer discussion, a special meeting to discuss this?
Mhm.
I guess that would be another question in the decision flow.
And when that could take place? Okay, Supervisor Masek.
Yeah, I would be open to spending some more time on this in a special meeting, to really make sure we know what we're looking at and setting what we want to see through the whole budget process.
Are we talking just the executive committee?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how soon do we want to do that? Before August? That'd be nice. Do you want to do like a special executive meeting next month or start earlier, or what are the things? How much time do you think we want?
2 or 3.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Steve.
if I
Here.
might interject this, I would not be in favor of adding this to any meeting. I think this is important enough to do it by itself. That would be the way I would look at it.
Okay. Any particular days? During the day?
Well, what about your schedule?
Mine's free after 2 weeks, so. Any input? Otherwise,
Yeah.
we'll get together,
So,
Dan, and we'll
yeah.
schedule something.
Yeah, I'm looking at, is daytime during the day an option? Are we looking evening, late afternoon? You know, this meeting is typically a 3:30 meeting on a Wednesday. We could do that on June 3rd, which is the first Wednesday of the month. All of the committee meetings moved around, so I don't think that interferes with any of them, but
You won't be here?
That's the only.
If June 3rd is the only date, I will make arrangements.
So let me see, just 1 second. Here.
Hope that's not your anniversary, Mike. Oh,
Third. Come on. That doesn't really work for me. Wednesday the 3rd, I'll be in 4 to 6 at a meeting, so
Okay. What about the following Wednesday? I mean, do
that was my
I have
last
to
day.
stick to Wednesday? Oh, that's your last good day.
That's my last open day, I mean,
Oh.
busy day.
Okay.
So anything after that,
the next Wednesday is the executive
Executive.
committee meeting.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
So,
I mean, we can schedule it.
we can go looking back.
You
So
want a real long executive or do you
The-
want?
we,
Separate?
It should be separate.
Okay,
May 27, I have the committee on admin. Is that
I can't.
we're trying to move that one. Yeah. Yeah, that is the chamber awards.
Oh.
I'm looking at Wednesdays. Do I need to look at Wednesdays or can I go to other days?
Two of the Wednesdays in a month are tied up with exec and regular work.
right.
Yeah.
That's why it's very limited.
So, could go. I mean, Tuesday, the 26th
Of,
of May.
just gonna say until June 3rd.
Okay.
So something post June 3rd.
Yeah, we need
For
to
me,
get to June for Randy.
Well,
Okay.
That's,
you're in the
yeah,
hunt,
yeah.
you accommodate-
I know, I'm just saying, I have most of my nights. Now, if we have her in the morning, 8 o'clock, great. Just not late in the day. I don't know. I know Kelly likes 8 o'clock in the morning, so I just,
So we'll put together some polling and send that out to
Yeah, we'll
the
get
committee
together
and figure out what we
figure
need
it
to
out.
do.
all right.
Suggestion.
So we will not bring to the county board in May. All right. Is that it for that subject for now?
Yeah, we are done with the county manager's report.
Man. Number 6, item placement, nothing. 7, resolution ordinance for the county board, executive committee, 2026 budget amendments combined. So what do we got here? Yeah. What do we have to do?
I
Prove
would
it.
move to
I,
approve it.
I second that move.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 7B, resolution authorizing the issuance of the establishing parameters of the sale not to exceed 12.3 general obligations promissory notes series 2026. Need a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Supervisor Bauer seconds. Any discussion? Go ahead. Supervisor Steen.
Yeah, this, is the verbiage in this resolution the same as the verbiage that we've had in other promissory notes in the past?
It is,
You know,
Very-
absent the figures.
yeah, very similar but this is a combined, so typically in November, we would do an authorization to borrow, and then in September, we would do a parameters resolution. This is the two of them combined.
I got it.
But the language in general is put together, and this is written, and I appreciate you reading out the entire item, because I got a specific email from bond counsel that says, make sure your agenda says exactly this, and they are also the people who write that resolution.
Yeah, that answers so this follows all the verbiage that we've signed for in the past.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Sarg.
So is this then the dollar amounts that will keep us at the 5.2 million? Do we need to make that decision right now also?
So that dollar amount, so these things go up to bid, and obviously things can move around, but so the way that is written provides flexibility for us to do that. So that is something that as it relates to the 5.2 versus the 6.2, this resolution would handle either of them. So I was looking for that for guidance to me, so that I will make sure that we do the 5.2 is what I heard is we're going to do one big jump and not tear it up. So, and that's obviously something you could bring to the full board if you wanted to, but I guess I'm hearing like, nope, we're just going to do this. And then our proposal to the full board will just say, this is what it will look like.
Any other discussion, comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 7C, resolution adopting the 2027-2031 capital improvement plan.
So, I know we talked about this a little bit, but maybe before we make a motion, Melissa is on the call and can speak to some of the questions that you had about mobile command.
Okay.
One, if you would like them.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Melissa.
Sorry about that. Hello. Sorry, I totally spaced the meeting. We had an afternoon shift person forget that they had signed up for overtime, so I was dispatching for a little bit. And once I got that done, I was like, whew, I'm out of here. So sorry about that. So I understand there is some questions about the monies that I had put in for improvements to the mobile command. So the mobile command is been in service since like late 2004, early 2005. It's never had any major upgrades. It's all in working condition. There is nothing major wrong with it at this point. It's just knowing that that is a little bit older vehicle, even though it does have very low mileage. It is still, an older engine and does a lot of sitting. And so there have been some requests to have some cosmetic upgrades to like the inside to improve its functionality. And so we just thought if we're going to make some changes like that, now would be the time, if we're going to stick some money into it, now would be the time to kind of go through the engine and some of the structure of the vehicle to make sure it's going to be sound enough to continue on for another 10 to 15 years. So currently there is nothing drastically wrong with the mobile command unit.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So there's the equipment and then there's the vehicle, as I understand it. Is that correct? when I say
Yeah,
equipment, I
so
mean
we
the
would,
thing.
yeah, like the radios and stuff that we have inside. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, anything that's
equipment?
inside that you might
Yep.
want to update separate from
Sure.
the actual.
Yeah, so inside there are some radios that we use for communications and some other technology. We do have a couple computers in there, some screens and stuff so we can like show the map and etc. within the mobile command itself. We have recently replaced a couple of the computers just I believe at the end of last year. The radios we've slowly been upgrading and we actually applied for a grant to replace some of those radios already. So there would be some maybe minor equipment purchased with this, but most of it would be going through the engine to make sure that it's, everything is working correctly and going to be working correctly for the next 10 to 15 years. And then, like I said, some minor to moderate remodeling inside to make it more spacious and then also to make it more technology friendly so we could add a little bit more technology.
Okay, any other? Mike?
And would we be able to recoup some repair costs from the other counties?
No. It it was considered a regional vehicle by our county board back in 2004 and 2005 when it was implemented. Um, because we purchased it with the Department of Homeland Security funds. And at that time, every county maybe chose something a little bit different. I think at the time, Eau Claire chose an armored vehicle. So I think the thought process is that we would all kind of share. Honestly, it is still regionally available, kind of within our region, but we haven't had a request to use it in a long, long time. So I don't know how much people would be willing to, contribute for any of this. And then Eau Claire now has one of their own. Pierce County has one of their own. St. Croix has one of their own. So there are still a few counties in the area that do not have it. As far as the agencies within Dunn County, I think that would be a policy change or something that we definitely could look at. So if we either, charge a fee to have it to try to recoup some of our costs, and say, hey, if we're gonna have this, we're gonna need X amount, per department or whatever. Or if we wanted to look at charging per use of the vehicle, if let's just say, Sand Creek Fire decides they need to use it, would we want to charge Sand Creek Fire and what would that look like? That's the only way I can see Dunn County kind of recouping any of this money.
All right, anything else? Thanks, Melissa.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Need a motion to adopt the 2027-2031 capital improvement plan that we have talked about.
I'll move approval.
Motion's been made by Morrow, seconded by Bouchard. Any further discussion? Supervisor McCall?
If we want to pull the emergency vehicle out, we would now need to amend because we just moved to adopt as, so if,
Oh, I
for
thought we-
example, Supervisor Wilsey wants to pull that out.
I would make a motion to amend to pull. Yes.
Maybe, do you want to remove it or move it to 2025?
2020.
Or eight, geez. 2028.
I mean, if there's nothing wrong with it at this point, I just remove it.
I would second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to amend, I was just gonna say, I'm trying to think, amend that we remove the regional mobile command center
Right.
from the CIP. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, of the amendment? Any opposed? The amendment passes. Back to the original or the amended.
The amended.
Amended. Fully amended CIP program, capital improvement plan. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there other discussion? Any other amendments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Oh, 7D, ordinance amending chapter 2 rules of the board related to resolutions from the committees. Speaking to.
Yes, after a long discussion last week, there's just a few words changing that in the two subsections that had committee items coming forward that they will get put on on the county board agenda. They shall be put on the county board agenda. So I forget what numbers they are. There we go. So there is a change to 4.09, which is resolutions form of, which is changing that to a misalignment of a reference to the resolution. But it is striking out. So it says, it used to say, and the act of filing shall serve as a request that the proposed resolution be placed on the agenda of the next county board meeting. So we struck out the serve as a request that the provided and replaced that with require the resolution to be placed on the agenda. So, and that is made in 4.09C. And then the requirements from this section will be waived. And then in section D, that same strike and add was also made. So one additional change, as we have ordinances up, I'd like to clean any of the other pieces that were out there. So in the appendix A, you'll see that kind of the preamble of that appendix had been struck. So that preamble was a part of the old ordinance, and so as these were now placed in an appendix, the first line of it says that committees shall be created by ordinance, even though we actually put them in an appendix. So we struck that whole area. It's all taken care of above, and so it was a kind of a copy and paste issue that we're just cleaning that up.
Supervisor McCullough.
Have one question. So that's an amendment to the appendix, essentially, striking from an appendix?
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm recalling correctly, the vote margin for changing the appendix is not the same as the vote margin for the whole, so that might be better treated as a separate resolution, because the first one is an amendment to the rules, which requires a 2/3 majority. The second is an amendment to the appendix, which is a simple majority. So do those need to be two separate items?
I don't know that they need to. I think they could. I suppose I think the risk of that language that is being removed, I don't know that it carried any weight in general. If this was denied, we may come back and do that at some point.
Sure.
But we certainly can.
Oh, no,
So,
it was
yeah,
purely
yeah.
I just, because of the different voting weight, I wanted to make sure that we at least looked at that before moving it as one piece. But if y'all are comfortable with that,
You're remembering right, and that's in 1.03, but doing them both
together. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah,
Sure.
Just a note in here under 2.02A, you added the reference to where this other stuff is updated. It says 4.07C and D, but as you said, it's 4.09. So that just needs to be adjusted in the new language to point the right way. And then just clarifying, as we're changing this, where resolutions can be proposed by an individual and they must be placed on the agenda. But then we are also saying you have to have a co-sponsor to add an agenda item. So that's if it's not a resolution, you have to have a co-sponsor and a petition, but a single person can do a resolution. 2.02 A or B, number 2. Because yeah, in 4, we talk about the resolution, a single individual can propose a resolution. But then in 2, we talk about to add something to an agenda, a supervisor needs a co-sponsor and a petition.
Yeah, so the one in section 4 says an individual may request that of the board chair, and the chair will then assign it to a committee. So the committee could squash that. And then it never necessarily comes forward. The one in section 2 would kind of give that authority kind of over a committee, if you would, to get something onto that agenda. Does that make sense? Certainly the intent. And I think these are things we can all read them in our own ways. But that is the intent around it, is that the one in 4.09C is an individual request that the chair says, I'm going to give it to this committee, and then the committee will do what they do with it. And if they don't bring it back to the board, then they don't bring it back to the board. If they do bring it back to the board, it will go to the board. But in 2.09, if an individual requests it, then it has to come back to the board no matter what. Committee can't deny it.
It would be a bigger change, but for clarity, it would be kind of nice if those two were together and not 2 and 4, but that's a lot bigger adjustment.
Yeah, in writing this rule set, just purely as a clarification to the question. So an individual can bring it to the chair sends it to a committee, or the chair does not send it to a committee. Then the recourse of that individual, this was to provide the individual with an opportunity to force something onto the agenda without moving to the state statute, which provides a separate process for that would be enormously more messy and complex, but there already exists a model. So this was a way to simplify it and bring it into our rule set.
So we're just telling them the recourse if they don't get the resolution before we tell them how to do the resolution in the way it's formatted. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay. That straightens everything out for me.
Yeah, I know too.
All right. So where are we at? Did we make a motion on this yet? No.
No.
So we need a motion.
I will make a motion that we forward the board rules adjustments after correcting the item 2.02A to point to the correct 4.07 C and D.
Okay.
I will cheerfully second that.
Not gonna,
You state the numbers one more time.
Correcting 2.02A to point to 4.07 C and D.
No, that you change to 4.
From 4.07 to 4.09 C and D.
okay. Any other discussion on this? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm not gonna read. Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 8. Review reports, resolutions, ordinance coming to the county board from the standing committee, community resource and tourism. 1, resolution to create a petition to request a change to the FCC television market area for Dunn County. Who wants to speak?
I can speak. Oh, okay. Yep. So this is a request that had come through a web request from a citizen asking for us to file a petition with the FCC to do that. So looked into it a little bit. Supervisor at the time, Chair McCullough, assigned that to the Community Resources and Tourism Committee. I did a little digging into that to identify what the role the county has, and the county does have the authority to make that request for satellite television providers. So not fixed wired cable, and also not streaming services. Streaming services are actually not regulated by the FCC in how they do that. So it is a request that we can make as a county. And so we brought that forward to the Community Resources and Tourism Committee.
Okay.
The meeting we held last night, they approved to go ahead with it, so now we're gonna move it forward to the board.
So we need a motion.
No, this is a
No,
review.
Just move it forward. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Pretty self-explanatory. 8, reports from the standing committees. I think we gotta start with Mr. Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did not have a meeting last month, but we did meet last night, so, there was a meeting was called to order right here in room 60 at 4:30. There was an overview. Kristen Bruder, the extension director, gave an overview of extension, sharing the new members, what they do and explain extension. Understanding the working partnership, Kristen shared a folder with materials. I have materials here if somebody wants to look at them. I'm trying to go through this fast. It's getting late, so, but there was no questions for the other educators. Adam Akula, is that Akula? I don't know. Acula, okay. And shared a report regarding work and housing, business and retention and business attraction. Dunn County Communications, Assistant County Manager Jenna shared press releases about the county board's elections, mental health awareness, and press releases. More will be coming soon. We reviewed the tier service catalog, operational planning exercise, and the vote was taken for the FCC, so our next meeting is in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bauer. Supervisor McCullough, Highway Transit.
Pretty routine transit, with, a few exceptions. Transit is trying to get back our deposit on the electric buses that we are very likely to never see, and have started to have a discussion about fleet update. Since we are not going to get them, we will need to do something else on fleet. And then some, basic this and that at transit, highway, stumping, culverts, spraying, mowing, 2 engineering projects, the Irving Creek Bridge replacement project scheduled for May 18th start date. That's the one that I think is probably most relevant to folks. Several others have discussion ongoing. The other one that's crew started paving operations on County E on May 5th. I think most of the rest of the stuff is a little further along in the year. I'll come back and tell you, oh, and now we're paving this or that. But that's about it for me.
Thank you, Supervisor McCullough. Supervisor Skinner.
Okay, the Planning Resource and Development met on the 5th. First time with our new crew, and there are actually 3 of us right here. We had visitors as usual, but no public comments. Register of Deeds, Environmental Services all gave the reports. We are amending land division and condominium chapter 16, went through that. It's ready to go for a public hearing. Register of Deeds also shared its operational planning document. I thought we would be meeting the 1st and 3rd Thursdays of each month, but we may have to change that. Our next meeting, I is going to be the 21st of this month. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Knight. Supervisor Bashak?
Committee on Administration met on April 30th. All the wonderful reports from our staff members with some questions there. We did get to see the new vouchers from BSNA for approval. And since we had 4 new members, that was a little bit of a fun new report, new staff or new supervisors. So provided a little bit of feedback, and hopefully maybe with BSNA, they were able to make some of those changes. We did approve update to the privacy policy related to technology. So the new phones in the county can start doing text messaging. When we did just ask for a little clarification and tabled an update to the drug and alcohol policy for safety sensitive employees. We brought forward the 2 budget amendments that we looked at today, and then our next meeting is still to be determined, as May and June are a little schedule heavy, but then we will be to the 3rd Thursdays in July.
Thank you. Supervisor Morris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health and Human Services Board also met on April 30. Never mind that the Committee on Administration went very late and we were able, all of us, to observe. We had our great usual reports from our 3 departments. Brittany Anderson did join us to review the new voucher format and took some questions and some suggestions from us. Great staff reports. We approved our vouchers and a budget amendment. Mostly what we did was review part of the public health service catalog and a small part of the human services budget, whatever, catalog. And it takes a tremendous amount of time. DHS has something like 18 areas, and all of them have complications of funding and mandates and so on. We next meet on the 28th, and we're doing it again.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor Morris. Mr. Supervisor Steen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The neighbors of Dunn County did not meet last month. We will be meeting this Friday, 9 o'clock, room 54. And I'm looking forward for the reconfigured committee. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Supervisor Steen. Supervise? All new.
All new, yes. We have not had a meeting yet. My meeting is on Monday with the Judiciary and Law Committee. So our last meeting was in February, and Supervisor Wilsey, I'm assuming, gave you an update on that at that time.
All
So
right.
Nothing to add.
And Supervisor Wilsey had to leave early, so there's nothing on facilities.
It's probably on the 3rd.
Anybody?
So, yeah, so the facilities committee had a discussion around the fair and being a part of the county. I assume that it will continue to be a part of the county based on the discussion. And in addition to that, then they went through the service catalogs, introducing the new members to the services and facilities report, and went through the activity, the threats activity that we've been doing related to operational planning. And then they reviewed the 5-year capital improvement plan with the changes that you saw as they came in here. So they met yesterday or Monday.
On Monday,
Yeah,
yeah.
Monday.
All right. Anything else that needs to be brought up? If not, next meeting is going to be June 10th. And we are going to start at 3 o'clock again, if that works for everybody. It's just simpler than having meetings at 3:30 and then 3 every other month. It seems like we've been doing so. 3 o'clock, June 10th, same place, time. Meeting is adjourned.
Excellent job, Your Honor.
Well